In Canada, like, we have to respect the fact, I don't know if we have to respect it, but acknowledge the fact, federal politicians can't snap their fingers and create infrastructure. Like, there's a lot of provincial power, and big problem is your province. Your province is politically dysfunctional. You have a completely dysfunctional conservative movement, and as a result, you have an NDP government that's kind of living in la-la land in terms of like reconciliation and treaty right. I mean, you've got people set to lose their homes.
Some have already. I mean, the title's already been compromised.
Yeah, and no shade on traditional Indigenous rights, which is a thing, but the idea that people can work their whole lives, put their nest egg in a 4-bedroom house, and someone just comes and takes it away and say, sorry.
Well, it calls into question Canada, because I mean, Canada's one that awarded the property, sold the property.
But
right?
not Canada, BC. Like, don't put this on Canada, because the historical relationship with treaties and Indigenous people in BC is very different from what it is in Ontario. And so it's very difficult for a guy like Carney to say, well, we're going to build this piece of infrastructure, including through a province that is as politically dysfunctional as British Columbia is. I mean, Alberta has its own issues, but British Columbia has become a real political basket case. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you the things we say about it in Ontario. They're very rude. So
don't worry, we do too.
Yeah, and by the way, and it's also like, you go to Florida, and Florida's like 5 different countries politically. Like, you go to the Panhandle, and it's all these rednecks, and then you go to Key West, and everyone's from Park Slope, Brooklyn. Like, it's just, BC's kind of like that. Like, you go to Vancouver, and even like Kelowna's a big city now. It's the political culture in Kelowna, like, it's very hard for this to be under the same provincial government, because I mean, the people in Vancouver must seem crazy to you at times. Like, some of the stuff that goes on there.
And they have the voting block. I mean, it's basically Vancouver decides what happens in the province, right?
Yeah, and people talk about the extremism, the urban-rural divide in the United States, and red state, sort of red counties and blue counties. There's a great book called What's the Matter with Kansas that came out, I think, 25 years ago that uses Kansas as a case study in this. That book, What's the Matter with Kansas, like, sort of looking at college towns, which are super blue, and rural areas that are super red. Like, you could do the same thing about BC. Mm-hmm. It almost doesn't make sense for it to be.
There's a little like orange spot there in the Lower Mainland kind of thing, and then the rest is blue.
But that orange spot has gone nuts. Like, there are now politicians essentially opposing any kind of public messaging against drug use, because, like, we shouldn't stigmatize, heroin usage and stuff, and some of the needle exchange stuff, certainly some of the Indigenous policies, and it's become, I mean, it's not my problem, I live in Ontario, but I guess it is my problem, because if you can't build a pipeline, an essential infrastructure project, because of the political dysfunction in this part of Canada, it is my problem. So you guys got to get your act together.
Well, we're trying.
Sorry to speak so directly, but,
Well, I mean, it is, I think, the Conservative Party kind of came out of nowhere, took over from the BC United Party, and then it's kind of like imploding on itself.
Of course, but it's led by this guy Rustad, and I never met him.
We've interviewed him several times.
I'm sure he's a good interview, but this is, to be polite, the conservative movement is very much in flux in British Columbia, and it's
imploding on its.
Well, you've got amateur hour, and it's kind of. I mean, do you remember the Canadian Alliance? And no shade on Stockwell Day, but remember you had the Bloc Quebec. You had the Canadian conservative movement fracture about 30 years ago, and Stephen Harper collected the pieces and made it into something coherent. Eventually, there's going to be a BC version of Stephen Harper that collects the fragments of British Columbia conservatism and gets elected, and all this is going to be in the past tense. But I feel like we're about 5 years from that point.
Yeah, there's and I won't get into. I think there's an opportunity in the next little while for something to change here in BC. I think because I mean, just my opinion. I'm not sure if John Rustad lasts, the next couple of weeks.
It could be gone to, like, he's got people resigning left and right. And then he says stupid things about it. This woman who resigned, somebody resigns from your caucus, you say, good luck in future endeavors. He got in front of a mic, if I'm getting this right, and started mentioning her mental health issues, which may be real.
I interviewed her yesterday, so if anybody wants to watch that, you can watch the
You
interview
don't
with
say
Amelia.
that. Who says this?
Yeah, you can watch that interview.
And that she supported Hamas, which I think is another intriguing.
By the way, I'm sure I've never met her. She may very well be a whack job, clinical term, but when your whack job resigns from your caucus, you don't say "so long, whack job." You say, again, good luck in future endeavors. It was a real pleasure for working for you.
He's made several mistakes, including I think he could have actually formed government because we've entered both Falcon and Rustad because Kevin Falcon was on the show many times, and John Rustad basically Falcon handed him the football at the 1 yard line and said, take it over the line. But Rustad threw the ball on the ground and said, I don't need that, because he left the candidates, the BC United candidates, twisting in the wind for 2 weeks. Like, there was a vacuum of leadership. You could blame Falcon for the vacuum, right? Because he just left, didn't talk to anybody. But then Rustad could fill that vacuum, but he didn't. He could have got on a Zoom call. He could have said all the candidates, we could make one party, took the strong candidates, but so many independents ran, it cost him the election.
I predicted on Twitter that he would win because I was ignorant of all these machinations, and he made a liar out of me, and I will never forgive him for that. Because I was bragging about how I'm always right on
But I think his
media.
ego got in his way, right? Because he didn't want Kevin, because I mean, obviously Falcon and him had a big problem, because that's why, Rustad left that party. But he could have made those calls, and then all those independents wouldn't have been running, and that cost them several seats, which would have been the difference, right? Yeah. And then he stuck with some candidates that had no experience, and 3 of them left right away also, right? So.
In the long run, it may be I'm sure it doesn't feel this way, but in the long run, it may be a blessing in disguise in terms of it will engender the professionalization of the right side of concern. And by the way, this is what happened nationally with Stephen Harper, where all of this sort of bozo eruptions, which is a term that we used to use in Canadian politics, the bozo eruptions cause people to cast about and say, we need to professionalize this. Who's going to be the person to do it? Eventually somebody emerges, and I think, although it sounds like you don't know who it's going to be yet.
Well, I have an idea, but
okay.
I won't put that out there yet. But I think a lot of people know that there's a very strong voice in that party that's left. I mean, you can figure that one out in a hurry. But
okay.